What's going on, everybody? Empire Build Blocks here. We're gonna go ahead and just jump right into things. This is my Grasslands cabin, and the cool thing about this is it encompasses all the different features and all the different styles of building that I use whenever I build any sort of structure. Now we're starting out with the foundation. The foundation is set up with a series of 5x5 pretty much squares. And essentially what this does is it creates a grid-like pattern from which I can build onto. And it tends to fit the scale really well, the Minecraft scale. And you can expand on this, like nobody's stopping you. But it's just the one that I use. So you can see I'm just going ahead and kind of putting together, a good foundation here. And the thing is, the key to making a really solid foundation, or at least making a really interesting building, it all starts with a very unique foundation. So it doesn't have to be a perfect square, and it really shouldn't be unless, the prototype that you're trying to recreate obviously has that. And you can kind of start to get a feel for what the actual look and layout of the building's going to be. Now, you can see I've added a bunch of different wings, and you'll see that in any sort of build tutorial. They'll be like, oh, make it different, make it different. So that's exactly what we've done here. Now, I'm also adding in detail at this time, and I like to add detail because later on sometimes you can forget to add little details here and there. And the key to this is irregularity. You don't want to make it perfectly the same. So I'm adding in mossy block, I'm adding in broken block as well, and you'll see that. Now, you don't necessarily have to stick to these just blocks. You can start adding in different, styles of blocks, and you'll see me use cobblestone for certain things just to give it a little bit more of a story. Adding details like this adds story to your building. That looks pretty good. Now I'm also going to change up the cornerstones as well, because it's these tiny little differences that kind of set your building apart from your standard building. For example, I'm using cobblestone on a corner, let's say part of the building, started to collapse, so they rebuilt it with some cobblestone. It's just, you can come up with fun little ways to add stories to your building. Now I'm jumping into what I call timbering. Timbering is the process that I use when I'm first setting up the elevation, or what the first floor, second floor, third floor of the building are going to look like. I think this adds kind of a neat little touch to it, especially depending on your theme. Even for buildings that don't require wood as cornering or anything like that, I'll still timber, but definitely a little bit less than something like this. Now I'm just adding cross beams because I know what the elevation of the first floor is going to be. And this is pretty much going to be where my ceiling line will be for the first floor. Just cruise right along here. Cool. Nice. Looks good. Lots of wood. Alright. Let's see here. This place is full of horses. At this point, we're going to start jumping into doing some of the walls. Now, because this is kind of like a Tudor style home, the first floor is usually, it's the heavier of the building materials. As we move up, we'll start using things like wood and stuff like that for the walls. But you'll see I'm just using a sandstone just to give it kind of a cool look. And it also contrasts well with the stone block and the wood timbering as well. That dark oak really makes the whole thing kind of come to life, which is cool. Now, again, I'm going to go in and add a little bit more textural differences. Like I said before, you really want to try to make it as sporadic and, uneven as possible. Your eye is so good at noticing a pattern that the second that you start doing patterns, it'll show up and it'll start to look kind of, I don't want to say amateur, but it'll just start looking kind of silly. Alright, so we got all that done. Now naturally, you know, sometimes on buildings, the wood of the wall is kind of showing through. So let's say that there was like a sandstone exterior kind of put together on wood planking. There we go. Now I got some wood plank in there. And you'll notice that I'm still using that same color palette. I'm not changing my color palette so much. It's still kind of that tan off yellow look. And it's really gonna give the building like that extra layer of appeal. And you'll see it when the whole thing's completely done, like it'll all make a whole lot of sense. Now usually for windows, what I'll do is I'll add these stripped stripped birch blocks, but you can really add them anywhere. Again, diversifying your color diversifying materials within your color palette will make your building stand out like crazy. Alright, I keep making little errors. There we go. Okay, so now we're looking at windows, apparently. Now, as you can see, there are a couple ways of doing windows. I like using shutters just because it gives you kind of like these trapdoors. Because they do give you that kind of look like it's a window, like an old medievally window. You can use glass on the upper stories, but I do prefer to use, you know, these because it does, you know, give it a little bit more character. And as you can see, I'm putting them on the outside edge of the block. And that creates like a cool little sill on the inside, so you have like a little windowsill. So you're just gonna do that for your entire first floor. All right, look at that. Not bad. Looks kind of neat. So now we'll go ahead and we'll add in a little bit of a floor. I've used dark oak. I like to change up my floors a little bit. Usually in the front entry of a building, your flooring is going to be a little bit different. So I used andesite. Kind of has a neat texture and looks kind of neat. I don't know why I just broke that window. All right. Pretty good. So now let's look at shutters. Shutters are kind of interesting. You can do them in a couple different ways. I didn't ultimately go with this style primarily because it kind of covers up that sandstone that I really want to see exposed. I've seen people use fences before, or these gates, and it just that doesn't look good to me. That just looks kind of empty, I guess you could say. So maybe this building needs something else. Let's try orange. Like the color orange, just to give it some diverse look. See, the problem here is that you're ending up with too many patterns. And it looks kind of hectic. Alright, now let's try out a ladder. I usually use ladders. Ladders look good. But again, I'm not sold. I'm not sold on the whole ladder thing. I don't know. So what I'll do instead, we might come back to it, but I'll add little signs to the bottoms of the windows, and that just gives it a little bit of an accent, and it'll actually increase, like if you're looking at the building, it'll make your building actually look a little bit taller, which is cool, less stout. Now continuing with the timbering look, just to give it that look that, you know, it's an old-timey building, you know, I'm gonna add some exposed timbers to make it look like the whole thing was made out of logs, or at least like the frame and timbering were made out of logs. What's cool with this style of building, and it's kind of like a Tudor style, is that you have layers. So think of it kind of like a cake. So as you go up, your layers are gonna change a little bit. Now I know that I don't want the whole entire second story to be a second story. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add in kind of like dormers on the ends of the building. And this will give your roof line like a really cool look. You're just using dark oak logs. Cool. And the reason why I gave it kind of that triangle with like the dot in the middle is so it looks like there's something supporting that truss work. Nice. Alright. Looks pretty good. Okay, so now we need to make a stairwell. Because before you start like putting together your second floor, you need to know where your stairs are going to be coming up. And it's much easier to do it at this point than later on. Now, again with like making it kind of like historically fun to like come up with the history of the building. Let's say like the original building was a one-story home, and now they're adding in that second story. So now what they're doing is they're adding wood planking to kind of cover up windows that were originally there. And you'll notice like, again, that just adds a little bit more variety to the building, which is really cool. Now I started out thinking like, oh, maybe I can do like a 2-block wide staircase. But that's just not gonna work. So essentially, I'll do a 1-block wide staircase. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Very neat. Cool. Now we need to add structural support to support the stairwell. I'm big on form follows function, and adding structure kind of adds a little bit more character. So we're gonna continue doing some timbering. Alright, that looks kind of neat. Kind of want to fill it in though. Using dark oak, stripped oak. Thing is, you got to utilize your space. So what I'm thinking of doing is actually turning this into a little closet. That way, you know, I have places to hide things. Like, I don't know, fish and, you know, maybe, I don't know, a lantern or something neat. Well, we need that gone. Alright, sweet. Cool. Looks pretty good. Looks pretty gosh darn good. Alright, let's check it to make sure it looks. Alright. The center of any building is really a chimney. So I'm kind of like, I spent a little time playing around and seeing like where I could put a chimney. That would be like a practical spot and a fireplace. So I chose this location here by the back door. So we'll see how I go ahead and I put that together actually. Houses are generally built around chimneys until you get to kind of like the Georgian period of architecture. You know, that's kind of when chimneys moved to the outsides of buildings or to the outer wings of buildings rather than the inside where you saw, you know, colonial and federal style architecture, at least in the US. Cool. Little area out there. All right. Now let's go ahead and we'll make this chimney and fireplace look kind of neat. We'll give it some character. Again, textures, textures, textures. So like sticking with the same color palette, but different textures will give your fireplace or whatever you're working on a whole lot of character. I love the new campfires, primarily because it's not gonna burn down your house. That is fantastic. Good on you, Mojang. Let's see, do I wanna? No. No, that looks silly. Keep it like that. Okay. So now we'll go in and we'll add a little bit more detail. Nice. Nice. Kind of looks like rough concrete. That's why I like the andesite so much. Okay. Yeah, that looks bad. Maybe? Alright. Alright, yeah, that's a lot better. A lot better. Now what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna start adding the remove, I call it the remove block look. So like, let's say some blocks were left out. It kind of gives your chimney a lot more character. And visual appeal. Look at that, looks like there's a block missing. But obviously I'm gonna be putting a door there later, so that's not gonna work. But yeah, so we'll just go ahead and we'll add these in randomly. I'm just using the block staircase. But that looks a whole lot better and a lot more interesting than just doing a straight rectangular prism for a chimney. And, you know, a lot of the good builders out there, because there's people who are fantastic and way better at this than I am, it's kind of there. They do the same. Let's add in a door. Now, in order to make your doorways not look squat, because there's a tendency to just put a door with 2 blocks and then like a solid block over it. What I like to do is I'll take like the same tone, like the same color tone as the room, and I'll add a like a half slab right above the doorway, and it creates kind of like this transom above the door. You'll see, and I'm gonna do that for all of my interior doors in this building. But again, it just adds an extra layer of cool. The use of stripped oak or stripped birch for the interior will give your walls kind of this cool, almost patina. Yeah, you can see it there. It just looks really nice. All right. See, made a cool little cabinet out of, or little storage space. I can put anything in there I want, you know. Just a bunch of apples. I feel like that would be something that you would find in a Grasslands cabin. Is a whole bunch of wheat, maybe some delicious apples. I don't know, maybe I'll throw a cake in there. World's my oyster. I'm just gonna add this as well. I like these things. I like adding a couple little add-on features here and there. Little outfit for myself. Being all leather cad. Nothing wrong with that. All right, perfect. Okay. Add a little end table. Boop. I also am in love with lanterns. My goodness, what a cool thing to add on there. So what I'm doing here, we're back to the outside of the building. I'm just adding some nether brick half slabs, because what we're doing is we're actually enhancing the upper or the second story's footprint, and we're extending it out 1 block. At this point, what I'm doing is I'm adding in some architectural detailing. It'll have kind of this checkerboard look, which I kind of like. Again, it adds kind of a cool touch to the building. It does extend the, you know, the second story up a little ways, but ultimately it tends to look pretty cool, and you'll see. I'm also going to be using a bone block. And the cool thing about bone block is it just has kind of like this off color that I like. It's not pearly white. I don't want it to be perfect. So essentially, we're kind of coming up towards the end here for the first video. I'm just adding in like little details here, you know, using dark oak again to give that timbering a little bit of support. It has a little bit of an over-engineered look. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to incorporate that into a little design trait, and you'll see it in a second. Essentially, I want it to have sort of like arch pattern over the window. It'll kind of break up the blocky look of the first floor. Yeah, see, just like that. That looks pretty cool. That looks pretty cool. Yeah, we're just gonna do these for all the things. Avoid corners. The thing is, like, if you try doing it in the corner, it's gonna look really crowded, and it's gonna look awkward. Alright. Yeah, so anyways, that pretty much completes the first part of this video. If you guys haven't checked out the page completely, go check it out. You know, we'll have a couple things up there. Also, be sure to check out the Instagram account as well. It's under Empire Build Blocks, and we'll see you next time.